There is a kind of pain that doesn't come from what was done to us, but from what was missing. It's the pain of emotional absence, of being unseen in moments when our hearts were wide open. As children, we didn't just need food or safety. We needed attunement. We needed someone to look into our eyes and say, I see you. Your feelings make sense. You matter. When that doesn't happen, a quiet wound begins to form, not visible on the surface, but shaping everything we later call love. It's the wound of emotional abandonment. You can grow up in a house where everyone is physically present and still feel completely alone. Maybe your parents were busy, stressed, distracted, or simply didn't know how to meet you emotionally because no one had ever met them that way. So, as a child, you adapted. You learned to suppress certain emotions, to stay quiet when you wanted to cry, to smile when you wanted to scream, to disappear when you most needed to be held. You learned that being yourself could cost you connection. That lesson becomes the blueprint of your adult relationships. When you carry this wound, love becomes confusing. On one hand, you long for closeness. You crave it so deeply it almost hurts. But on the other hand, you fear it because closeness feels dangerous. You learned long ago that connection can vanish when you're most yourself. So you begin to protect your heart in subtle ways. You withdraw just a little when someone gets too close. You overanalyze, doubt, or look for flaws, not because you don't want love, but because you fear the pain of losing it again. This is how emotional abandonment becomes a self-protective strategy that ironically keeps love out. People often mistake this for commitment issues or emotional unavailability or simply bad luck in love. But beneath it all is a terrified inner child who once reached out for warmth and found only coldness. That child still lives in you, in the way you hold back your tears, in the way you downplay your needs, in the way you settle for connection that feels familiar rather than nourishing. The child within you learned that love is something to chase, to earn, or to survive. Never something that simply exists without condition. When someone genuinely cares for you, this wound gets triggered. Their warmth feels foreign, even suspicious. You may find yourself questioning their motives or feeling unworthy of their affection. Part of you wants to believe them, to surrender into safety. But another part whispers, don't trust it. Love leaves. And so you keep your distance, not with words, but with invisible walls of self-protection. You don't mean to push people away, but the wound has its own logic. It would rather be alone by choice than abandoned again without warning. The most heartbreaking part is that you often attract people who mirror your original wound. They, too, might be emotionally unavailable, distant, or inconsistent. You are drawn to them because something in your nervous system recognizes the pattern, not because it's right, but because it's familiar. Your mind says, this feels like home, but it's not home. It's the echo of a wound still waiting to be healed. And until that wound is acknowledged, you'll keep replaying the same emotional story, hoping that this time it will end differently. Healing begins when you finally allow yourself to grieve what you never received. That grief isn't self-pity. It's self-recognition. It's giving yourself the love, empathy, and validation you were one. It's denied. It's learning that your emotions aren't too much. Your needs aren't a burden. And your desire for connection is not a weakness, but a reflection of your humanity. You begin to see that the one who abandoned you wasn't just someone else. It's also the part of you that learned to abandon yourself, to stay safe. The journey back to love starts with turning toward that inner child with compassion rather than judgment. You begin to listen to your own pain instead of silencing it. You let your tears fall without shame. You stop running from loneliness and start sitting with it, holding it like a small, trembling hand that has waited years to be noticed. In doing so, you begin to offer yourself the very presence that was missing. That's when love the first time becomes possible. Not the kind that demands or performs, but the kind that simply is. Because the truth is, love can't reach you until you make space for it inside yourself. When you stop abandoning your own heart, Others no longer can. And slowly, love becomes not something you chase, but something you live from. When love becomes something you have to earn, it stops feeling like love and starts feeling like performance. Many of us grew up learning, in subtle or painful ways, that affection was conditional. Maybe love came when we behaved well, got good grades, stayed quiet, or played the role our parents needed us to play. We learned early that to be loved, we must become something obedient, helpful, strong, smart, or entertaining. And so we began to trade authenticity for approval, believing that our worth depended on what we could do, not who we truly were. This belief doesn't vanish as we grow older, it simply changes shape. As adults, we perform in our relationships the same way we did as children. We adapt to others' moods, anticipate their needs, silence our truth, and mold ourselves into the version of lovable we think they want. The tragedy is that we might even be loved in return, but it's a love built on our mask, not our essence. We feel unseen, misunderstood, and unfulfilled, yet we don't know how to stop performing, because being real feels like a risk we can't afford. You might notice this pattern when you find yourself constantly trying to please your partner, afraid to disappoint them, or anxious when you sense their withdrawal. Your nervous system reacts as though your very survival depends on their approval. That's because once upon a time, it did. Love and safety were intertwined. As a child, losing love meant losing safety. And so you learn to keep love at any cost, even if it meant losing yourself. This is why so many people find themselves exhausted in relationships that look fine from the outside, but feel hollow inside. They are still trying to prove their worth instead of feeling it. The performance doesn't always look desperate or obvious. Sometimes it looks like perfectionism, the drive to always be good enough. Sometimes it looks like caretaking, being the strong one who never asks for help. Sometimes it looks like overachievement, emotional distance, or humor used to deflect vulnerability. Whatever the form, it is all armor. Armor that was once necessary to survive becomes the very thing that keeps love from entering. And yet, beneath that armor, there's always a longing, a quiet hope that one day someone will see past the performance and love what's real. But the cruel irony that no one can love what you don't reveal. If your love is a performance, then the applause might come, but intimacy never will. You might attract people who like your act, your kindness, your composure, your reliability, but they can't meet your heart because your heart is hidden behind the show. Healing begins the moment you stop auditioning for love. That doesn't mean you become careless or cold. It means you start noticing where your love comes from, fear or truth. It means you begin to ask yourself, if I didn't need to be chosen, how would I act? What would I say? Who would I be? Slowly, the walls start to soften. You begin to realize that love isn't something you perform for. It's something you allow yourself to receive. And to receive, you must first be willing to be seen, unfiltered, imperfect, and real. That's the terrifying part, isn't it? Because when you drop the mask, you risk rejection. But what's worse than rejection is living your whole life unseen. Every time you betray your truth to stay loved, you repeat the same abandonment you suffered in childhood. Only now, you're the one abandoning yourself. You silence your voice, ignore your needs, and call it compromise. You put on a smile and call it strength. But deep down, your soul knows this isn't love. It's survival wearing love's disguise. The freedom you've been searching for doesn't come from finally being perfect enough for someone else. It comes from giving yourself permission to exist as you are. When you let go of performing, you create space for authenticity. And authenticity is the soil in which real love grows. The right person won't require your performance. They'll make you feel safe enough to stop performing altogether. So you begin to practice honesty, even in small ways. Saying how you really feel, admitting when you're hurt, allowing yourself to rest, to be vulnerable, to disappoint others if it means staying true to yourself. Each small act of authenticity heals a part of the child who learned that love must be earned. And as that child learns safety and truth, Love begins to shift. It softens. It slows down. It stops being something to chase and starts being something you live inside of. Love becomes possible again when you finally understand the real performance was never needed. You were worthy of love long before you learned to earn it. To be truly seen is one of the most beautiful and terrifying experiences we can have. We say we want closeness, we long for intimacy, we crave connection. Yet when it finally stands in front of us, offering warmth and presence, something inside begins to panic. We turn away, we joke, we change the subject, we pull back just enough to keep things safe. It's not because we don't want love, but because somewhere deep down, being seen feels like danger. It's a memory in the body, a quiet fear that once, when we showed who we were, it cost us connection. As children, many of us learned that showing our true feelings brought rejection or shame. Maybe when you cried, you were told to stop being dramatic. Maybe when you were angry, you were punished instead of understood. Maybe your curiosity, your softness, your individuality was too much for the people who raised you, people who themselves never learned to hold emotion with tenderness. So you learn to hide. You learn that it's safer to be what others want you to be, rather than risk being who you truly are. That hidden child never really goes away. Even as adults, we carry that protective instinct, the reflex to conceal the parts of ourselves that once led to pain. And so, when love comes near, we hide again. We fear that if someone sees the real us, the messy, uncertain, insecure, or sensitive parts, they'll withdraw, that they'll leave just like before. This is why vulnerability feels like exposure, like standing without armor in a storm. We crave love's warmth, but the cost of being fully seen still feels unbearable. This inner conflict shapes so many of our relationships. You might meet someone kind, someone safe, someone who genuinely wants to know you, but the moment you feel their eyes seeing deeper than the surface, you shut down. You deflect intimacy with business, sarcasm, or emotional distance. You want to be understood, but you don't let yourself be known. And then you call it fate when love slips away, not realizing that your heart has been hiding behind invisible walls. To be unseen is lonely, but to be truly seen when you don't yet feel worthy can feel even lonelier, because being seen means there's no mask left to protect you. You stand before another person naked in your humanity, and that's where the old wound trembles most. The part of you that was once shamed or ignored whispers, "Don't let them see too much." You mistake safety for invisibility, and yet invisibility is what keeps you disconnected. Love cannot reach what you hide. It doesn't matter how deeply someone cares. If you won't let them see you, you can be surrounded by affection and still feel empty, because the love isn't touching the real you. It's touching the version you allow the world to see. That's why even in loving relationships, people often feel unseen, unfulfilled, or misunderstood. The mask may protect you from rejection, but it also blocks intimacy. Healing this fear begins with the courage to turn toward yourself. Before you can let another person see you, you have to see yourself. Your emotions, your needs, your longings, your fears. You have to look at the child who once felt unseen and offer them the acceptance they were denied. When you do that, slowly, the fear of being seen begins to soften, because now, no matter what happens outside of you, there's a place within that says, "I see you and I'm not leaving." When you no longer hide from yourself, you stop hiding from others. You start speaking your truth even when your voice shakes. You allow your tears to fall instead of pretending you're fine. You let someone hold you, not because you need rescuing, but because you've stopped pretending you don't need connection. And in that moment, intimacy becomes possible, not as a performance, but as a meeting between two open hearts. To be seen is to be known. To be known is to risk being hurt, but to never be seen is to guarantee a deeper kind of loneliness, the loneliness of living a life that never truly belonged to you. When you finally allow yourself to be seen, love stops being something you chase and becomes something you share. Because only the self that is revealed can ever be loved, and that self has been waiting a long time to be seen. Unhealed wounds have a way of circling back, not to punish us, but to remind us that they still exist. The stories we didn't finish in childhood keep replaying in our adult lives, wearing new faces, new voices, new circumstances, but always carrying the same emotional signature. It's not coincidence that you keep attracting the same type of person, or that your relationships tend to end the same way. It's the unconscious at work, trying to resolve what was left unresolved. It's your psyche's attempt to rewrite the old pain with a new ending, even though it keeps getting caught in the same old beginning. When we grow up unseen, unprotected, or unloved in the ways we needed, our nervous systems learn to equate love with struggle. We become drawn to what's familiar, not what's healthy. If you grew up chasing attention, you might now chase emotionally unavailable people. If you grew up silenced, you might find yourself with partners who never really listen. If love once came with fear or control, you may unconsciously seek that same intensity again, mistaking it for passion. The pull is magnetic because the child inside you is still searching for the parent who never gave them what they needed. That's why certain relationships feel so intoxicating at first, not because they're right, but because they're recognizable. Your body recognizes the energy of your wound. It's like walking into a room that smells exactly like your childhood home. Familiar, comforting, yet full of ghosts. You think, this feels like home, but it's not home. It's history repeating itself, disguised as chemistry. And when the same heartbreak happens again, you tell yourself you just have bad luck, when in truth, it's not luck. It's pattern. It's repetition. The repetition is not a failure of willpower or intelligence. It's the mind and heart's desperate attempt to repair what was broken. Deep down, there's still a hope. Maybe this time, if I love enough, give enough, stay enough, I can finally be chosen. You're trying to heal the past through the present, but instead of freedom, you find yourself trapped in an emotional DAG view. Every disappointment feels heavier because it carries the weight of all the times before. This is why awareness is the first step toward healing. Until you see the pattern, you can't change it. As long as the wound remains unconscious, it directs your choices from the shadows. You'll keep finding people who reflect your pain rather than your potential for healing. The moment you bring the wound into the light, when you can say, I see what's happening and I understand why, the cycle begins to weaken. Awareness interrupts repetition. But awareness alone isn't enough. The wound has to be felt. You can't think your way out of trauma. You have to feel your way through it. You have to let yourself grieve for the love you never received, for the moments that shaped your fear of abandonment, for the parts of you that still wait to be held. The repetition begins to dissolve when you stop trying to fix it through other people and start tending to the ache within yourself. Healing doesn't mean you'll never be triggered again. It means that when the familiar pattern shows up, you no longer respond from the child who was desperate to be loved. You respond from the adult who can hold that child with compassion. You no longer confuse chaos with connection, intensity with intimacy, or control with care. You begin to recognize that real love doesn't reenact your pain, it soothes it. Breaking the pattern often feels lonely at first. You'll have to walk away from relationships that once felt like home. You'll have to sit with discomfort instead of escaping it through another familiar heartbreak. But slowly you begin to build a new kind of safety. One that doesn't depend on being chosen, but on choosing yourself. In time, you start to attract people who meet you where you are, not where your wounds once were. Love begins to feel different, calmer, steadier, more grounded. It's not a high, it's a peace. You stop searching for redemption through others and start finding healing within yourself. And that's when the cycle truly ends. Not because someone finally stayed, but because you did. Healing doesn't begin with finding the right person or the perfect apology from the past. It begins the moment you allow yourself to feel what you've spent a lifetime avoiding. The pain that shaped you, the loneliness you buried, the anger you were told was unacceptable. All of it waits beneath the surface, asking to be acknowledged. What was once too heavy to carry is still inside you, quietly influencing every choice, every relationship, every reaction. The only way out of that pain is through it. And the only way through is by feeling what was once unfelt. As children, we didn't have the capacity to process the full weight of rejection, fear, or neglect. Our nervous systems couldn't handle that kind of emotional pain, so we learned to suppress it. We pushed it down, denied it, numbed it, or escaped it by becoming whatever we needed to be to survive. We became the good child, the helper, the achiever, the caretaker. Those roles protected us, but they also disconnected us from the truth of our own emotions. And as long as those emotions stay buried, we remain controlled by them, reacting to life not from the present moment, but from the pain of the past. When love enters your life, that buried pain doesn't disappear, it gets exposed. Every time you get close to someone, the old wounds rise up to the surface. You might feel anxiety, jealousy, fear of abandonment, or the urge to pull away. These feelings are not signs of weakness or failure. They are the voice of your younger self saying, "Please, this time, don't leave me behind." But because these emotions feel overwhelming, most people run from them. They distract themselves, blame others, or close their hearts. The tragedy is that by avoiding their pain, they also avoid the healing that could set them free. To feel what was once felt is to give your inner child what they never had: safety in the presence of emotion. It means learning to sit with sadness without trying to fix it, to feel anger without turning it into shame, to let grief move through you without fearing it will consume you. It's a gentle return to yourself, a way of saying, "I won't abandon you again." This process can't be rushed or forced. Healing doesn't happen through understanding alone. It happens through allowing, through the courage to stay with your own pain long enough for it to soften. It might sound paradoxical, but the very emotions you've been avoiding are the doorway to peace. Beneath the sadness is love. Beneath the anger is longing. Beneath the fear is the need to feel safe. Every painful emotion is a messenger pointing you back to a part of yourself that wants to come home. When you begin to feel, instead of suppress, you reconnect with your own humanity. The numbness fades. The walls begin to crumble. You start to experience life more vividly, not because everything becomes easier, but because you are finally present within yourself. Feeling what was once unfelt doesn't mean drowning in pain forever. It means allowing emotion to complete its natural cycle. Emotions, when fully felt, move. They rise, crest, and pass like waves. It's only when we resist them that they become trapped inside us, hardening into patterns of anxiety, depression, or disconnection. When you let yourself cry, shake, or simply sit in stillness with your pain, you are allowing your body and heart to release years of stored survival energy. You are teaching yourself that it is safe to feel again. This is where healing truly begins, not in changing your past, but in changing your relationship to it. When you can face your emotions with compassion rather than fear, they lose their power over you. You stop being ruled by the echoes of childhood and start living from the truth of the present. The wound no longer defines you because you are no longer running from it. And slowly, love begins to feel different. It's no longer a battlefield or a test. It's no longer about fixing or proving or chasing. It becomes a space of calm, of safety, of presence. Because once you have met your own pain, with tenderness, you stop seeking someone else to heal it for you. You realize that love was never lost. It was simply waiting for you beneath all the unspoken sorrow, in the quiet strength of finally allowing yourself to feel. Real love begins where pretending ends. It starts the moment we dare to show up as we are, not polished, not perfect, not endlessly accommodating, but real. To love and be loved requires courage, not the kind that conquers mountains, but the quiet courage to be seen without defenses. After a lifetime of hiding behind masks, of performing for approval, of repeating patterns born from unhealed wounds, choosing authenticity feels radical. But it is the only way love can truly find you, because love cannot reach the person you pretend to be. It can only meet the person you really are. When we begin to heal, something changes deep within us. We no longer crave love as a means to fill our emptiness. We start to understand that love is not supposed to complete us, it's supposed to meet us. And for love to meet us, we must first be present within ourselves. Healing reconnects us to the parts of us we once hid, the tender, uncertain, emotional, sensitive parts we thought made us unworthy. As we begin to hold those parts with compassion, the need to hide them slowly dissolves. We stop chasing acceptance and start living in self-acceptance. The truth is, for many of us, love has always been conditional. We were loved for our achievements, our compliance, our usefulness. Rarely were we loved simply for existing. And so we learn to earn affection rather than receive it. But real love, the kind that heals rather than wounds, thrives in honesty, not performance. It requires the willingness to be seen, not only in strength, but also in vulnerability. It asks us to lay down our armor and say, "This is who I am. I'm not perfect, but I'm here." That moment of truth is where intimacy begins. Being seen doesn't mean oversharing or demanding constant reassurance. It means showing up as your authentic self, expressing your needs, your fears, your joys, your truths, without shrinking or exaggerating them to fit someone else's expectations. It's about allowing your heart to be visible, even when your mind whispers that it's safer to hide. It's about trusting that the right love will not use your openness against you, but will honor it. That kind of love doesn't make you smaller, it expands you. When two people meet from a place of authenticity, something extraordinary happens. There's no longer a performance, no game of who cares less, no silent contracts based on fear. There's mutual respect for each other's humanity. There's space for imperfection, for repair after conflict, for honesty after misunderstanding. Love becomes a living thing, not a fragile illusion you have to protect. It breathes, it grows, and it teaches you that being real is far safer than pretending ever was. But arriving at that kind of love requires letting go of control. You can't manipulate real love into existence. You can only make yourself available for it by being truthful, open, and grounded in self-awareness. When you stop hiding, you stop attracting people who need your mask. The ones who only loved your performance will fade away, but in their place, you'll begin to draw in relationships rooted in authenticity. People who see you not as someone to fix, but as someone to meet. This is the moment healing becomes freedom. You no longer fear rejection because you would rather be rejected for your truth than accepted for your disguise. You stop clinging to what isn't meant for you because your self-worth no longer depends on someone else's approval. You start living with an open heart, not because you're naive, but because you finally trust your own ability to hold yourself through whatever comes. Love, in its truest form, doesn't rescue you from your pain. It meets you in it. It doesn't erase your wounds. It embraces them. When you love from a healed place, you don't need another person to complete you. You invite them to walk beside you. The connection becomes a choice, not a dependency. And that's the quiet miracle of real love. It doesn't demand that you be perfect. It only asks that you be present, because love, when it's real, doesn't require you to hide your scars. It holds them with tenderness. It doesn't heal you by fixing you. It heals you by reminding you that you were never broken in the first place.